In this video, I want to talk about three things: emotional flashbacks, hypervigilance, and avoidance, about how they go together and relate to extended childhood trauma and CPTSD. One of the first epiphanies I had when I started digging into what CPTSD entailed was realizing how certain things brought up anxiety in me. Unusual things like a car door slamming, keys jangling, a doorknob turning, people yelling or laughing. These sounds would cause me to start feeling anxious, even angry. I would start thinking up ways to defend myself. I would be agitated. I would want to leave. The epiphany was so obvious when I had it, but it felt so monumental. All these sounds and smells, the situations or clothes or accents, whatever it was, reminded me on a subconscious level of traumatic events in my past. In the past, when I heard someone slam a door, it meant someone was angry, and they were going to come take that anger out on me. My body was preparing to carry out a very habituated set of instructions: fight, flight, or freeze. The problem was, there was no need for that. No one was trying to hurt me now, but it didn't feel like that. My brain was locked into this conditioned response: when I hear X, react with Y. An emotional flashback, as far as I can tell, is a term created by Pete Walker. Unlike a normal flashback where you see a specific event playing out in your mind and feeling like you are there, an emotional flashback usually doesn't have any specific memory. It's just a reaction, a feeling. It can come seemingly out of nowhere. It doesn't, though. With time, you will start to recognize their patterns, and you will connect the dots from your past. Quote, "Emotional flashbacks are sudden and often prolonged regressions, amygdala hijackings to the frightening circumstances of childhood. They are typically experienced as intense and confusing episodes of fear and or despair, or as sorrowful and or enraged reactions to this fear and despair." Pete Walker. When you see a bear, your body reacts. I know this firsthand after running into many bears while hiking. You don't need to think about it. You either run, get ready to fight, or you freeze. I freeze. Thankfully, black bears, when they see me, react with flight. They bolt off into the woods. We have been conditioned in childhood to react in certain ways. Those reactions kept us safe, or we believed they helped minimize danger. For me, freezing and not reacting helped. I learned that when the men were drunk and angry, if I did anything, I would fuel their anger. They wanted me to react. They wanted to be angry. They enjoyed the power of it. Freezing and keeping quiet was the only thing I could do. Unfortunately, that conditioning is carried over into my adult life. Quote, "Traumatized people chronically feel unsafe in their bodies. The past is alive in the form of gnawing interior discomfort. Their bodies are constantly bombarded by visceral warning signs, and in an attempt to control those processes, they often become expert at ignoring their gut feelings and in numbing awareness of what it is played out inside. They learn to hide from themselves." Bessel A. van der Kolk. These fight, flight, freeze, and as Pete Walker adds, fawn, conditioned responses cause all kinds of damage to our lives. A person that responds with fight may become narcissistic and entitled in ways such as misusing power or promoting excessive self-interest. They may be quick to anger. Flights can become obsessive-compulsive in activities such as workaholism, sex and love addiction, or substance abuse, uppers. They flee from the emotions through distractions. Freeze, numb themselves. They disassociate by sleeping excessively, daydreaming, or tuning out with media or drugs, downers. Fawns abandon themselves and become what they think the others want them to be. Another adaptation traumatized children learn is hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is when you are on constant alert for danger. You hear sounds others ignore. You pick up on subtle body language and voice inflections. These children are trying to predict when an environment or person is going to become dangerous. Quote, Adaptation to this climate of constant danger requires a state of constant alertness. Children in an abusive environment develop extraordinary abilities to scan for warning signs of attack. They become minutely attuned to their abuser's inner states. They learn to recognize subtle changes in facial expression, voice, and body language as signals of anger, sexual arousal, intoxication, or dissociation. This nonverbal communication becomes highly automatic and occurs for the most part outside of conscious awareness. Child victims learn to respond without being able to name or identify the danger signals that evoked their alarm. Others describe their efforts to become as inconspicuous as possible and to avoid attracting attention to themselves by freezing in place, crouching, rolling up in a ball, or keeping their face expressionless. Thus, while in a constant state of autonomic hyperarousal, they must also be quiet and immobile, avoiding any physical display of their inner agitation. Judith Herman. When hypervigilance carries on into adulthood, you will find yourself on edge and jumpy. You will see danger where others don't. You may prefer to err on the side of caution and think someone looking at you is angry, rather than just having a bad day that has nothing to do with you. Another term that goes with this is avoidance, the act of not doing something or going somewhere. You avoid nearly anything that causes this reaction in you. That's how unpleasant the feeling is. When you can't be around laughter or loud voices, when a car door shutting or engine noises cause you extreme anxiety and anger, it makes simply going to the grocery store a major event. One of many things you avoid, only that leads to isolation. Eventually you will get to the point where you can't go anywhere and just stay locked in your home or room. Worse yet, you live in your car, or you abuse drugs to avoid, and that really messes things up. Quote, but the features of post-traumatic stress disorder that become most exaggerated in chronically traumatized people are avoidance or constriction. When the victim has been reduced to a goal of simply survival, psychological constriction becomes an essential form of adaptation. This narrowing applies to every aspect of life, to relationships, activities, thoughts, memories, emotions, and even sensations. And while this constriction is adaptive in captivity, it also leads to a kind of atrophy in the psychological capacities that have been suppressed and to the overdevelopment of a solitary inner life. Judith Herman. The thing is, when we avoid something, it gives it power in our mind. When you avoid going and doing something you want to do because you know it will bring on an emotional flashback, you reinforce that behavior. You're basically saying, last time we felt like this, we left. Then we felt better. We should just not do this thing. That way we won't feel scared. To sum everything up, we have been conditioned to respond to certain things with certain primitive yet distinctly human reactions. Emotional flashbacks. We are on constant alert, scanning the environment for any cues that signal danger. Hypervigilance. This constant guardedness causes us anxiety, and we avoid any situations that may trigger these reactions in us. Avoidance. The way beyond all this is to learn to recognize what things cause these reactions in us. Is it yelling, slamming sound, certain smells, certain clothes on people? Whatever it is, learning to recognize it, you can say to yourself, okay, I'm getting anxious because those men are being really loud right now. I'm safe. They don't want to harm me. This is just an emotional flashback. As you become better able to recognize what will upset you, you can relax your hypervigilant scanning. You can begin to go into situations that you previously avoided because you know why it bothered you so much. All of this will take time, a lot of time and patience. Facing your fears is extremely difficult, but absolutely necessary. Give yourself credit for even the smallest of victories. Quote, do the thing you fear and the death of fear is certain. Ralph Waldo Emerson. If you feel this video is helpful to you or may benefit others, you can support this project in several ways. On YouTube, subscribing to my channel and liking the videos, gets YouTube to recommend them to more people. I also have a Patreon account. There you can make a small donation. I will be adding extra content there as a way to thank everyone. The link is provided below. However you choose to support this channel, it will be a small step towards connecting with others, which is maybe the most important step to healing from CPTSD. Thank you for your support.